Hi, this is Sarah from sarayip.com and Facebook The Numbers Queen with the amazing William Wong, also known as Willy Wonka on Instagram and his other pages. So do I call you Will, Willie, William?
I don't really mind. Well, whatever resonates with you, I guess.
Very flexible being this one. Willie is a yoga teacher. He does Reiki, sound healing, and so many other amazing things, Qigong, energy healing in Melbourne. And I discovered him on Instagram. I'm not sure how, possibly because he has a lot of half-naked photos of himself with lots of muscles bulging, which let's not interpret that the wrong way, folks. It just caught my attention because I'm human. It doesn't hurt. And also the fact that his I feel embarrassed now. The fact that he's got a really good writing style, really clear, covers a lot of ground, and really like a pure energy. So as much as I haven't done any of your classes, I felt drawn to having this chat with you, and I'm very happy and grateful that you're going to spend this time today. So welcome.
Thank you.
I thought I'd just weave in a little bit of numbers and then also talk to Willie about how to deal with critics online, which is the theme for today. And I know quite a few people watching are wondering about this because it's, bullying's always been around. But now the bullies have this kind of new arsenal, this anonymity and this rapid fire possibilities with social media. For those of us who are out there doing our thing, it's almost like your success really depends on being able to dodge those bullets or block those bullets. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So how do you like to introduce yourself, Billy, when you meet people? How do you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, it's always like such a simple thing, just speaking, or it should be a simple thing perhaps, speaking about yourself and what you do, but I always find it really difficult to, I guess, explain it in ways that people understand. And perhaps what I usually say is I'm a yoga teacher, and although it's funny this is coming up actually, because I catch a lot of Ubers, I don't have a car. I transport to most places, but if I start really early or finish late, then I catch Ubers. And the Uber drivers would always ask me, what do you do? And whenever I say I'm a yoga teacher, they always come to like, oh, well, how does yoga help me lose weight? Or, what is yoga about? What is yoga? And then it's like, end up having to go into this huge, long discussion. So sometimes these days I just say, I work in customer service. So I work in health and wellness, or, I just use really broad terms now, because sometimes it can be quite exhausting having to explain everything that I do, and in a way that I guess honors that as well. So sometimes I prefer just not to go into it, but obviously on this I can explain. So I am definitely a yoga teacher first and foremost, and I'm getting into sound healing and energy healing. And to be honest, I think I'm at a point where I'm needing to start to consolidate things a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm asking you the question, because as you probably know, I work as a psychic, and I'm, when I look into your energy field, it's just, it's like a nightclub with 7 different floors. And I just don't know where to start dancing. I'm just going to dance through the whole structure maybe. And it's glorious, absolutely glorious. I just don't know where to start. So, maybe this interview will help both of us, me to understand, how to live that lifestyle where you're a public healer, which I find quite fascinating. For you, maybe, learning how to express yourself in a way that doesn't draw you into constantly, like you said, draining interactions, which I think really feeds into the topic, because people really love to put you in a box, right? As soon as, and the taxi driver is just an example of so many people in our lives, and they just want to be able to file you away so you're not a threat.
Totally.
And then as soon as you expose that you're doing something radical, it can kind of go either way. So yeah, I kind of agree with you. You know, sometimes it's probably kinder to just say you work in customer service or human relations or something, because in a way you do. And
Yeah.
you know, for the same reason, I'll often just say I'm a counsellor,
Yeah.
because if I say I'm a numerologist, I've had some pretty funny conversations. One woman in a gym thought I said meteorologist, and then she asked me what I thought of climate change. And I actually was able to answer because my previous occupation was an environmental scientist. But quite a lot of people, when I talk about numerology, they think I've said neurology because clearly I'm Asian, I'm a doctor. They start asking me about, you know, strange things that happen in their head. And I'm like, well, you know, it's got a crossover with what I do. So yeah, it's a valid thing to bring up. You know, wouldn't it be great if we could just have a different way of greeting each other? You know, like how are you being right now? You know, what's your big focus as a soul? Geez, that would just make so many people's lives easier. So I just have a few other things I wanted to bring up about you. You've got this really fascinating background where a lot of your family, you know, clearly you're Asian. It's not like stage makeup. And you know, you've got your family being Chinese doctors, acupuncturists, teaching Tai Chi. This is all very high level stuff, you know, a lot of responsibility, pressure, authority. So I guess one of my questions I'm wondering is, how do they have they embraced your yoga lifestyle?
It's a very good question.
And you're
And
allowed to say pass.
no, it's I mean, I guess you would know with Asian parents, they often
That's a whole nother webinar. We'll have to run a whole podcast
yeah.
series on that one. My husband wants to run one on how to have an Asian wife. I think it's Can you imagine? We've got a whole bunch of friends who are like lining up to be in that one.
Yeah. I think my partner would definitely watch that as well. So as you know, often Asian parents have an idea of what they want for their children, and sometimes a quite fixed and rigid idea of what success is. And I mean, I acknowledge it's probably passed down from their parents and their parents' parents, and you know, it's in the ancestral line, I suppose. And so for me, it was always, I was supposed to be a doctor.
Oh, you too.
Yeah.
We should have a society.
Like the billions of other Chinese people, I suppose. Doctor or lawyer, it's kind of...
No one's ever supposed to be a patient. What's with that?
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, my screen froze. I'm hoping it'll
That's all right.
unfreeze soon, but hopefully the audio is still working.
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Worst case scenario, I can stop the video and start it again. I might just do that. Just give me one sec.
Okay.
Let's just try again.
Sure.
I must have got too excited. My energy's so... Oh, no. There I go again. Oh, this doesn't normally happen except today. Obviously, I need to learn to be more patient, and that was some kind of joke on me. All right, well, I'm going to turn off that just for a minute, and we'll just... You can talk to the name.
Okay.
All right, so sorry, your parents were expecting you to be a doctor, and so what happened when you came out as a yoga teacher?
Yeah, so I guess long story short, there was definitely disappointment there, and I'd have to say that at some point in my life, probably around my mid-20s, so I'm 32 now, as you know, but around mid-20s, I'd say, I call it like my quarter life crisis. I went through this phase of, I guess, a lot of, you might call it, you know, like the dark night of the soul, or you know, like a chaos cycle, or a point where I sort of needed to fall apart to put myself together again.
Yeah.
And part of that process included, and I don't know how to put this nicely, but I basically had to distance myself from my family to a certain extent. So I had to have, I guess, stronger and healthier boundaries around my relationships to my family. And I still believe that was a necessary stage of my growth and my evolution, I suppose, or my soul's evolution. And it really helped me discover what I wanted and what was my path, not like beyond what my parents expected of me or what society or culture or, all of that. And, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but part of my journey led me to be a flight attendant for 3 years.
Can I just share a little bit for the people who are watching or listening? So what I do is I work with people. We look at their numerology. So that comes from the date of birth as a starting point. We know with you, Willie, you have 32/5 life path, so number 5 life path. So your pivotal ages are 5 and 32, which is why it's so interesting meeting you right now, because it's 100% guarantee it's going to be a big year, a lot of transition. We're already seeing that. And the 5s, they come here to heal their throat chakra, to find a different way, to turn heads, to shock, to provoke. And your one is the same as my father's and my mentor Caroline's, and I do actually call it the world traveler. So they have an insatiable curiosity, an incredibly dynamic energy. So sorry, you were saying that you were a flight attendant for 3 years.
Yeah, so that totally makes sense, as I was able to, I guess, really find a bit of freedom there. And what I loved about that job was that sort of essentially once you finish up on the plane, you're free, like wherever you are. And I tended to do mainly domestic and sort of short haul. So I did Bali maybe once or twice, but it was mainly for me east to west coast. So like Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane to Perth and that sort of travel. And yeah, and once you get to the destination, you can just kind of do whatever you like. And I also realized that at that point in my life, that was the first choice that I made for myself, because up until then it was essentially what a lot of us go through. You have to go to primary school, and then you have to go to high school, and then depending on your upbringing, you're expected to go to university or some sort of higher education. And so I did all of that, and I did a bachelor's and I did a master's, and then I kind of fell flat on my face, kind of thing. I was like what now? Like I've kind of lived my life living someone else's expectations for me. And then it's almost like I had to sort of fend for myself. It's like, you've got all the tools, you've got everything. Well, you've got the tools that, society expects that are enough to support you. But then for me, it wasn't enough. And
yeah, that domestication you talk about, that, I mean, even just the pressure to sit on a chair, which is so not fantastic for our chakras, for our backs. It literally stifles our creative center and turns us into like almost like babies in high chairs waiting to be served. I mean, that's a lot of psychic pressure on people. And yeah, I do find, especially the more academic you've been, almost like the more you need to rewild yourself. That's like a movement, that you might have heard of. And, it's almost a miracle that some of us come out of that kind of tunnel thinking and we still care. Yeah. As much as it's a useful pathway in some industries, it's interesting how we're seeing right now a mass dropout from the rat race, and the children actually turning out to be baby bosses. And literally we are now forming our society around having our children at home, which is a massive part of my forecast earlier this year. So it's just a miracle, the fact that you've still got this sparkle. So thanks for sharing that. And I can certainly relate, because going from working for government and the United Nations to telling your parents you want to read palms. It's like, you want to read Psalms, you want to be a pastor. That's okay, you can be a pastor. No, I want to read palms, Mum. Oh, witchcraft, Satan. Yeah. Not my most popular moment as a youth. But at the same time, extremely character forming. And basically the types of readings I do is helping people at the moment where they know people are going to despise them for hopefully a short period of time. So I wonder, something we've got in common is we both take people on these journeys, but we also have had to learn to detach. Like you, at the end of your class, you can't sort of counsel people all the way to their next yoga class. There's got to be a point where they've got to go and literally exercise in real and daily life. Okay, well, thank you for sharing that and for being so honest. I wanted to ask you a few questions. So one of them is basically, what do you love about having your own yoga practice or yoga business? And I'm aware that until recently you've been working mainly for studios, but having looked, at your social media, you're doing a lot of launches right now. You've got Downward Dudes with males and mental health. You've got online classes. You're certainly blossoming. So what do you love about that?
That's a great question. And definitely what stands out is that working for studios for me was, or is, because I'm still technically I'm still sort of employed by them. And I think once this is all over, hopefully we can rekindle those
Yeah,
relationships.
they have a nice energy that is, what's it called, humming puppy.
Yeah, I mean,
And they've got studios that have a humming sound, which is wonderful, because I was looking up Jonathan Goldman the last few days, and he talks a lot about the power of humming. And wow, yoga studio that hums with activity. How cool is that?
yeah, totally. I think that's part of what drew me to them as well. The fact that they're almost a little bit thinking outside the box, I suppose.
Almost a little bit, definitely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I really like the energy of that. So yeah, what do you love about now, I guess, having that? What's one of them?
So both of the studios that I work at, I'm actually quite fortunate in that they don't restrict our creativity that much. They allow us to, I mean, there's in yoga, I suppose there's always styles of classes, or a lot of students that have been practicing for a long time, they gravitate towards a certain style or a certain way of practicing yoga. So if a teacher offers Ashtanga or Yin yoga or Yang, I mean, there's so many, I could go on and on. Then if they attend that class, they expect some sort of outcome or some sort of experience from that class. And so apart from that, in the yoga studios, I feel that they give us a lot of freedom, the studios that I teach at anyway. So I am lucky in that sense, but then still I'm limited by time, for instance. Like by an hour class, I'm limited by who comes, and and sometimes I have to be in that setting. I have to be a professional, and I do take my job very seriously as well. So that's that's aligned with me anyway. But I guess I have to remember that I'm also the face of the company, if you like. So I'm sort of, when everything I say is sort of on their behalf as well. So that's I need to be accountable for that as well. So I guess that leads me to your question, and being able to have my own brand and my own business, I'm essentially able to just do whatever is true for me. And I mean, I guess with that comes a greater responsibility, because if something goes wrong, it's kind of, I can't really, not that I blame others, but it basically is just, it falls on me completely.
Yeah, there's no filter. There's not as much of a safety net unless you create it. And they talk about responsibility. Responsibility is the ability to respond. And yeah, when you're responsible for your own paycheck, it's a massive inspiration for a lot of us. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, being able to build something for yourself, give yourself some credit. It's very important in the healing industries that people start giving themselves more credit, because credit has the same energy as money or change. And if healers don't have some kind of reserves, unfortunately, they can often live in their heads because they're stressed. And there's this beautiful idea, you should charge enough so that you can not think about the money. That you can actually just be really present with your client. So whatever that amount of money is, charge it.
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And I probably tend, sorry, it's just going on.
Keep going. It's the joy of the internet.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I tend to think of money just as energy these days, and there's many ways that you can have that energetic exchange, and even now I'm offering like donation-based classes, and sometimes just having that connection, like knowing that my students are on the other side of the screen, if you like, that's enough. And, you know, and I do feel like I am getting enough at the moment. Like there's enough of the money or the exchange or whatever it is, the gratitude and those moments together. And there was one more thing I wanted to say about, oh, and sorry, just continuing a little bit on from having my own sort of business. One other thing that I'm very passionate about, which I suppose I can't really do in an ordinary class, is going on like a retreat, like taking my students on a yoga retreat. And to me, it's like a chance to really go deep within. And we're given, like, usually I do 5 to 7 days. And you and I spoke a little bit about the chakras. So I focus on moving through the major chakras each day. And yeah, essentially getting into, you know, childhood trauma and, you know, more of those blocks that really, yeah, I guess that really prevent people from getting to that next step or that next
being flexible, evolving, growing, forgiving. Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. You know, it took years to get there. It took years to create those blocks, and it's only reasonable to think it's going to take at least a week to shift some of them, right? It's amazing. You know, when we used to farm and garden a lot more, people were just so much more in tune, because they knew it would take 60 days for carrots to grow, and you can't just go to the supermarket and buy a pack. So there was that need for foresight. There was that need for perception and you know, a little bit more patience, basically. But you know what you're saying makes a lot of sense, and I'm guessing actually the world has changed so much in the last few weeks that there will be a huge demand from now on for things that clear our blocks, because we've all had time now to sit there and notice they exist, or notice that they're really in our face right now. You know, a lot of people are drinking more. My PT was saying emotional eating's been going up dramatically at the moment. Maybe that's a future topic. But people are really at home with their demons for some of them. You know, it's not everyone's in that situation, but for some people, this is their worst nightmare. And, you know, realistically, we're hoping, you know, some people will listen to this call. That's the wake-up call perhaps a lot of people needed, that this is at some level, or it doesn't have to be, you know, permanent. It doesn't have to be permanent, but the longer you sit on it, the more it becomes embedded and harder to budge.
Yeah, totally.
So what is the hardest part around having a business, being a yoga teacher, having to be fit, basically? I find that, you know, in itself fairly intimidating. But yeah, what's hard? You know, what are the things that that are challenging if you're trying to get into that industry or into that field?
Yeah, I think for me, definitely. Sorry, now my throat's going a little.
We're clearing each other's stuff.
Yeah, totally. So for me, definitely a large part is probably the discipline. And it's I think it's something that I've struggled with my whole life. And part of it is maybe that rebellious streak within, sort of being like, no, I don't want to be confined. I don't want to be told what to do. And it's probably not until I started to have my own business, which, you know, I guess the last couple of years I've started developing that aspect on the side, as well as having, you know, the yoga studios to work for. And it's only until I started to reframe that in my own mind that, you know, this discipline isn't to oppress me. It's actually out of a devotion or a dedication or a commitment to myself, or even a self-love, that I'm placing certain structures on my life and my habits, and in order for me to essentially within that structure to have more freedom to do what I love. Because I think it's that balance, you know, of yin and yang, or masculine and feminine. And yeah, and then you do need a certain level of discipline. And yeah, and I guess that
that's been the hard part.
Yep.
is what you're saying. Yeah, you know, I can really relate. And I guess the image that comes to mind when you speak, because I often see things when people speak, is it's like building a tree house. You know, it's a lot of effort to get those planks and wood up into the tree and the carpet and whatever other cushions and nice little teapots and stuff. But once you built it, you got a tree house. Like, it's about having that vision and maybe talking to other people who have tree houses, maybe visiting their tree houses to get some ideas. And, you know, one day you'll be sitting in your tree house looking at everyone who doesn't have a tree house going, but you wish you had a tree house.
Love a good
Come
tree
and visit my tree house. Maybe I can give you some tree house building lessons. And, you know, having your own business at a time like this could go either way. It really could. You know, some of us will get through it. Some of us will have to really, you know, maybe shut down and rebirth. But yeah, that tree house, that idea of something that is just for you, and it's almost like, you know, it's a really got a high energy for you. It's somewhere you can go and you can be like the highest version of yourself. It's beautiful to have that, even if it's on the side. It's just beautiful to have something that you're chipping away at. And it's such a stress relief to know that you've got something to go to. And yeah, there's no harm in having a day job. I had a day job for at least 5 years when I was building this business. And I wouldn't even say I voluntarily left that job. I was basically kicked out by the universe. But yeah, I've actually talked a lot about the 1111 energy, which is about multiple sources of income, multiple sources of happiness, of spirituality. And that's the difference between what we currently have, which is, you know, one God, one income, one boss, one soulmate. It's so limiting and it's so broken now. And almost no one can live on a mono diet. I mean, who could eat potatoes for the rest of their life? And we're not that type of human anymore. Maybe we were once. But yeah, multiple streams of income is the big thing. So another question is, which is the theme of today, how do you deal with people who try to take you down, people who throw rotten apples at your tree house, you know, people who shake your tree trying to get you to fall out? How do you deal with that? Because obviously everyone's going to do it differently, and I'll share mine views later. But, you know, what do you do? Because I have seen there's a little bit on your site, and no doubt as you start to publish your writings more and more, it's going to happen. How do you deal with it?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's probably something that's been coming up for me a lot, and especially, I guess, transitioning from you know, being more studio focused to starting to be more like about my own business and, you know, sole trader, I suppose. In the past, when we'd get feedback or criticism, like you'd always, in my case anyway, you'd always have like the owners or the managers or your colleagues to support you and I've kind of got that support network. And then whereas now it's like, if it can feel like a real personal attack now, like it's directed just at me, you know, it's perhaps not about the business or the operational side, but it's about me. And look, these days I haven't received a lot lately, and when I do, and I think part of it is starting to be more aware of the boundaries that I put up and sort of what I'm willing to accept and not. And, you know, for me, it might sometimes just be a matter of just blocking and just not even responding, not even investing any of my time or energy in it. And I find sometimes I can sort of feel it in my body, sort of like in my gut or my solar plexus, if it's worth investing in, or if it's not. And more often than not, it's not. But then sometimes it brings up stuff within me, like it triggers something within me, and it's like, well, you know, maybe I will go into this not for the sake to, you know, appease whatever they're saying to me, but actually for my own growth. And it's like, well, actually, what can I learn from this? And so I definitely don't take things as personally as perhaps I used to. And one of the things that I sometimes focus on is, or what I tell myself, I suppose, is that that I'll always care what people think of me. Like I'll go through phases that I've definitely in the past where it's like I don't care what anyone thinks, but I think I was just lying to myself. And there'll always be like I'll always care what my family thinks of me. I'll always care what my loved ones think of me, and I might not agree with what they think of me, and I might not let that affect how I think of myself, but I will still care. And so what's really important for me, I think, is my own self-belief in myself and how I value and worth myself. And if I'm very solid in that, and I learn to really back myself in that, then whatever anyone says or throws at me, like it might, it might hurt a little bit, but it's not going to push me off my center. And
Yeah.
that's essentially how I really deal with it these days.
Well, it's kind of energy yoga.
Mm.
Energy yoga. And it makes a lot of sense. And when you're talking, I get the image of a really tall tree. The first tree that breaks the canopy is the one that's going to get more sunlight, but it's also going to be the one that gets the most lightning.
Mm.
And a lot of the times I counsel a lot of people who want to be at in a management level or running their own lives, especially females. And I talk about, the winds are stronger at the top. The winds are stronger. The cliffs are steeper. There's there's less people to hold your hand. There's got to be a point where you switch over from, really almost like that spoon feeding, needing someone to always reassure you, and you just internalize that inside yourself as like this spiritual lullaby.
Mm.
And of course, it's still good to ask for help, but you're often really, it's quite a harsh energy at the very top of an industry, which is probably why most people like to shelter just below the top or just in that middle tier, which is okay as well.
Yeah.
Okay, makes a lot of sense what you're saying. So what advice could you give to people who want to have more of a public profile? Maybe they want to go on social media, they want to have photos of their beautiful body. Random people in the public could be saving on their computers, who knows what they're doing. What's the advice there? Because I have to say, like, for me, that would be pretty out there. I haven't done anything like that. And isn't, as a yoga teacher, literally your body is your work, isn't it? And people are judging your body. So any tips there?
Yeah, look, I think the biggest, I guess, learning for me anyway is to really understand the motivations behind it, and to and to be really honest with yourself about that. So like from my example, I would say there's, and definitely in terms of social media and Instagram, maybe Facebook to a lesser degree, but there is always an underlying narcissism. Like it is sort of about you, you're putting yourself out there, you're promoting you. And for sure, there's been times for me where it is quite narcissistic. I do get quite narcissistic, and I can still fall into that sometimes. And I do need to be careful with that. And I find that when I am presenting that side of me, then that's what I will attract. I guess it's energetic.
Yeah, makes sense.
So,
We talked about energy vampires when we were setting up this phone call. Oh, there goes my picture with me brushing my hair, which is so extremely hilarious. It's looking like I actually care about my hair. There you go. The truth is out.
we're talking about narcissism.
As a number 5, you're good at bringing out the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. With energy vampires, it's interesting because basically, they're like adults. What do they call them? Like adult children or something like that. And there's this unmet need that just overtakes any level of maturity. So what do you do if someone comes to your class and they're very needy? How do you discriminate between genuine need and just, I don't know, wanting to suck your energy?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because it's been a big thing for me, especially I would say the last six months, even, like, I mean, before the coronavirus. And for me, it's I guess it depends on my state of like my state of being or my state of mind at that time as well, and whether I've been, you know, really consistent and disciplined with my disciplines and looking after my own energy. Because obviously, you know, if we're tired, if we're hungry, if we're grumpy, you know, we have a lesser capacity to deal with these, you know, perhaps more triggering events and interactions. And so sometimes if I'm feeling really sensitive, then being aware of that and perhaps not allowing myself to be in those vulnerable situations as often. So it might be like I've been taught little techniques such as like crossing my arms, sort of like protecting this area, without being too rude about it. You know, it's that balance of sort of gently kind of turning, you know, sideways so that we're not like full on, like full frontal with each other. And I'm trying to think of other little, you know, sometimes it's about drawing down, you know, white light or golden light and, you know, creating a sort of imaginary bubble. But then often that's not, you're not able to do that when it's like, it's happening right then and there. You can't just suddenly like close your eyes and be like, just wait a moment, I'm creating a protective shield.
You can actually just put yourself in a bubble and put them in a bubble. And I do a meditation every day called Detox Relationships, where you basically move their bubbles around using your breath. And you can do it instantly. It does take a bit of practice to do in the moment, of course. Excuse me, I've just got some very enthusiastic children outside the door.
That's all right. That's so good.
If it's okay, I'll just add something there. We're starting to wind up, but the energy vampire thing for me is quite relevant because, you know, even as a parent, sometimes you feel like that's what's happening. And that, of course, that is coming from here. But for me, it's always a sign that my ratios are out. My ratios are out, my balance is out. It's almost like having your pH out. Because, what I find is when I am in lack and I'm ravenous for sleep or food or some comfort, my kids will just be relentless. And they will just keep going until I remember that is their way of saying, we'd like you to look after yourself because we kind of need you for the rest of this mission for quite some time. And they're not able to say that because it would be giving the answer away, basically, and that's about free will. So that happens with my kids, and I'll take myself away and have some time, even though it seems counterintuitive. It's the most loving thing to do. And at work as well, I find if I get a lot of spam emails, a lot of people asking really strange things in messages, you know, where they go, I know you won't answer this, or I know you won't read this, or they tell me their whole life story like this, but there's no real rapport building. It's just like a dump. Hey, I found someone to just let go on. I know, again, for me, it's often a sign to turn off my phone. Raise my prices is actually a common one. Or even just, look in a different direction. So, I suppose translating the appearance of energy vampires can be a useful way of channeling the energy. And then sometimes just having those really direct conversations that's not okay.
Totally. Yeah. I'm learning to do that more effectively. And I find that sometimes I overdo it and I can come across as a bit of a bitch and start to offend. And then it's like they tiptoe around me now. It's like around me.
Well,
so I'm learning to temper that.
You have a very passionate nature. I can see that.
Yeah.
You know, well, they're still coming to your classes, or they're still in your life. You know, obviously, maybe that's part of the push and pull of the relationship or karma you're working through. I don't think we ever get it quite right, but I guess what we can do is we can always ask for feedback and we can clean it up with the person. And it's so often I thought I've been really mean to someone, especially in a reading. You know, I'll be like, oh, where did that come from? Obviously, it's part of the reading, but sometimes it comes out as a bit of a quite strong. And like 8 times out of 10, I'll email them. Sometimes years later, sometimes it's bothered me for that long, and almost always they don't remember it, or they're like, yeah, that really helped, really needed that. And every now and then I do have to apologize, but I'm cool with that. So it's not a terrible thing to follow up if you feel like you have put your foot in your mouth and knocked out some teeth.
Yeah, totally. And sort of on that, sometimes I find that it is it's sort of, yeah, it's realizing that sometimes you need to have those difficult situations, and not just for you, but for them as well. Like maybe it's helping them in some way. And and often I remind myself, like when I'm feeling like there are people draining me, it's often about power for me. And as sort of like how you mentioned, maybe a sort of a lack of. And sometimes I find that just reminding myself to come back into my heart, whether it's actually just placing my hands there or just feeling into like my emotional system, I suppose, or any emotions or feelings. And then it's like I'm able to move away from that power control, that sort of fighting for power, and
Yeah.
move to actually there's unlimited, unconditional love for all of us. We don't have to fight for it. And then it allows me to have a little more compassion for the other party, and then it allows me to soften, and often I find that helps. So it's kind of a bit of this and this rather than just like this, you know.
Yeah, you're right. That's the beautiful balance. And when you said that, I got the image of being the sun, and I often like to imagine myself as planets and random spiritual things. So yeah, the sun it can't be depleted. Well, not in about 3 billion years. So it is actually part of the superstition. I do a lot of clearing with people, their superstition. Because if you carry superstition like black cats are bad or Friday the 13th is unlucky, unfortunately, it does hold back your intuition, and it makes it more likely that you'll be believing imagination rather than true messages. But yeah, there is actually a belief in the spiritual industry and who knows where else that we can be depleted, as in like as a spirit we can be depleted. And I've struggled with this for a long time of whether energy vampires really exist, or whether it's actually just all in our heads. I guess where I'm at the moment, I do believe they exist, but I have to say there was a time I didn't. Especially when I first started my readings, I didn't do clearings and all that kind of jazz. I just had this belief that I was amazing, and I just went in there gung ho. And so far, no one's thrown a lawsuit at me for those readings. But at the same time, I was in my 20s, and I had a lot of energy to burn. So I'd say what I do now is I put my seatbelt on, and I do some clearing before and I do some clearing after, and I just think of it as a safety precaution. And that seems to be working for me, especially once you start doing the harder work, which for you could be doing more advanced classes or longer retreats. It can't hurt, but it's not coming from a place of like I'm dirty or contaminated. It's coming from a place of I want to remember who I am. And all it is I often take on the other person's personality so strongly, I'll start talking like them or acting like them or eating like them. And for me, I want to, stop playing that role and have a bit of a snack break. So yeah, it's not coming from a place of being dirty. I find that's a little bit out there in the industry. You've got to like cleanse yourself all the time. I mean, it's really just like at most a fine layer of dust. You don't have to just constantly be clearing all the time. Otherwise, you're actually spreading fear.
Totally.
Instead of building immunity. So it's a little bit like physical immunity. If you're always worried about getting sick, you probably will, because you'll miss the person who's sitting next to you with like very obvious signs of illness, because you're so worried and you're so like tunnel visioned.
Totally. And actually, just on your analogy, it just brought to my mind that, like if we are the suns, then perhaps those energy vampires are like black holes who just haven't realized that they are suns as well. So instead of realizing that they can radiate out, they're still in the phase of drawing in.
It's a really powerful and interesting analogy, because some people do see the black hole as, an ego that is out of control. And you see it all the time, is they just never satisfied. Never satisfied. The hungry ghosts, I think, is what they call them in some of the literature. Well, I've learned a lot from you, and I'm really grateful we were able to do this call. Is there anything you want to tell people about, that you've got going on?
So if you wanted to get in contact through social media, I've got Instagram, which is Willie_Wonka_, and I'm sure Sarah will write it out if you.
Sure, and it's the Wonka, WONGKA.
Yeah, Wonka, because I'm William Wong.
Was there do you actually have a feeling about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? Is that a thing for you?
It, yeah, like it's definitely something that I loved as a child, and some friends used to call me that, like, as you know, for in like a fun nickname. And yeah, it's funny, no one's asked me that before actually,
Are you
but
serious? It's like
yeah.
the most obvious question when I first met you.
But
Um,
there's something about the, whenever I think of it, I always think of when Charlie gets the gold ticket in the chocolate, and
yeah.
it's like his, I don't know, it's like his ticket to his dream, or his, you know, like his purpose. And I think maybe that's what kind of lights me up by the name. It reminds me of
Yeah.
that.
Well, my son Charlie's called after Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, not
Oh.
Charlie Chaplin. And Forrest is Forrest Gump, who was Forrest Gump in utero. And he clearly loves boxes of chocolates. And
Mm.
I basically called him that, partly because he told me, partly because then when I'm in the park with him, I can say, "Run, Forrest, run." Really, really fun. And people always look at me like, she didn't just do, did she just? Oh my God, Asians, right? Asians. Um, okay, well, thanks for sharing that. So, what's your website?
Oh yes, so my website is yogathewongway.com. And and I've also got Facebook, like a Facebook business page, which is, uh, gosh, what is it? I think it's also Yoga the Wong Way. But
Okay, I did laugh when I saw that as well because, um, it does sound like the wrong way.
yeah,
And then I thought, God, that's so cheeky. You'd have to be pretty confident to pull off a name like that. Do you know what I mean? That's just
yeah,
inviting smart ass comments.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I hope you have an amazing year ahead. I look forward to perhaps doing some more stuff with you. So yeah, you can do online yoga with Lily. He's got quite a lot of mental health type stuff coming up all online. He does healings. Are you doing distance healings yet?
Yeah, I actually am. I've got a regular client who I've been doing them with, sort of one or two a week, and I'm actually starting to offer intuitive astrology readings as well.
Oh,
That's
that's
another
cool.
passion of mine.
Yeah, awesome.
And yeah, and I do go. I think I told you about this, Sarah, but I have a sort of a mediumship psychic circle that I
Yeah.
attend every week,
Yeah,
and
you're
so
full of surprises, huh? I'm like, we're going to talk about yoga. Nope. No, straight down the rabbit hole, and then a little further than that. Woo!
yeah, I've got probably too many interests, but I mean, at the moment, I'm loving delving into all of these different avenues, and just sort of, I guess, seeing where it takes me and seeing how it unfolds. Mm.
When I don't know if this is advice, I'm trying not to give advice, but it's a suggestion based on my experience.
Yeah.
But being a little bit older, I guess. When I started in the industry, I was very incredibly skeptical. I did about 1,000 readings for under $100 before I believed I was psychic at all. Like I just called myself a palm reader. I said I looked at hands.
Mm.
And I was a bit dubious of people who had long lists of things under their name, like they do all these 12, 15 different things. But
Yeah.
it's quite funny because having been in the industry now for 13 years, I have a long list of things. And so I understand now it's actually just it just keeps opening up, and people suggest things, and the universe comes and upgrades your abilities, and it's just the most natural thing in the world. Like I never used to do tarot,
Mm.
but when I did Mind Body Spirit festivals, people constantly asked me to do tarot. So I picked that up over time, and it was the same with past life regressions. That was for my own personal healing. So don't doubt yourself. The fact that you have different things in your toolbox, think of it like spices and herbs, and it just allows you to work with more types of people. But at the same time, yeah, you do need to know what you're doing, because any of those tools can lead you directly to enlightenment when practiced with great presence.
Mm.
So yeah, my mentor Caroline is a 32-5 like you, and over the years she's evolved what she says she is, and maybe that's something you could play with. This is who I am at the moment, but this is, that my business cards may be rotating every quarter. Hold on to them, they're collectibles. They're like Garbage Pail cards or whatever, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cards.
Totally
I look forward
limited
to seeing
edition.
what new incarnation you are next time we talk. And that's beautiful. So thank you so much. It was amazing to meet you.
Thanks
And
for having me,
yeah, I
Sarah.
look forward to getting some feedback on this call, and we'll hopefully hear from some people once they listen to it.
Awesome.
Okay, so I'm just going to stop the recording now.
Okay.